Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for attending. This is the session Changing the Narrative that Pets Are a Barrier to Housing, part of our 18th annual Train Institute and Conference. I'm Ryan Beach. I'm the Development and Marketing Program Manager here at CCEH. This is a wonderful panel. I'm so happy to have everyone here. We were given a really unique opportunity from PetSmart Charities to establish an emergency assistance fund for households and families with pets. So we have some great experts here today who we will talk to about some of the specifics of the program, but also, you know, the sort of bigger point about why keeping families and pets together is so important. As many of you know, the theme of this year's conference is Housing Equals Justice, and we feel that this session really exemplifies that in a different way. You know, oftentimes they look at a pet or an animal and think that that's not a deserving need for a household, especially a household of someone experiencing homelessness that has, you know, other such pressing needs. But, you know, we obviously feel completely opposite, and that keeping these households together is incredibly important, and, you know, has so much impact on the success of housing going forward, and so much emotional trauma potential in separating those households. So we're really pleased to present this panel here today. We hope you're enjoying the conference so far. It seems to be very well attended, and we've heard lots and lots of great things. So, you know, please feel free to use our hashtags and our social media here to spread the word. We have 3 more days left, including, you know, we have this panel left today, as well as our happy hour following, and I have some more details about that later, but pets are encouraged at all happy hours, but especially today's and at this panel as well, as we're all moving from home. And a huge thank you again to our presenting sponsors for the conference, Bank of America and Zillow, and to PetSmart Charities, who not only is funding this wonderful program, but has also made this panel possible. And we are really viewing this panel here today as the launch of this emergency assistance program. Very quickly, I will go over, so just who our speakers are today: Kelly Balthazor of PetSmart Charities, Garrett Parsons of the Interfaith Hospitality Network of Greater Cincinnati, and Theresa Geary, who is incorrectly labeled as Youth Action Hub, but is actually the Connecticut Humane Society, and will be one of our partners here as we move forward with this program in the coming year. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Kelly, who will give a brief introduction about PetSmart Charities. And thank you so much.
So, yeah, hi, I'm really excited to be here with you. So I am Kelly Balthazor. I'm the Regional Relationship Manager for PetSmart Charities, which means I oversee the grant making for owned pets programs for all states east of the Mississippi. And I'm fairly old in this business, so I've got about 20 years experience in corporate philanthropy and social responsibility and grant making. And I started my career in fundraising and nonprofits. So to date, we actually just got all these numbers together. I've either raised or given away about $120 million in my career. So I'm very excited about that. It's going to be on my tombstone. I'm a proud parent to 2 human boys, and right now 4 rescues, having just gotten a brand new one this weekend. So I've got a 17-year-old rat terrier named Hobbs, a 6.5-year-old, 1.5-year eared Chihuahua mix. Cooper is our newest ball of anxiety. You might be seeing him today on video because he likes to sit on my lap. And he's a mini Aussie Pomeranian mix. And then Kona is our wackadoodle. She's a 3-year-old ball of fluff that's absolutely crazy. Full disclosure, all of them are in the office with me. So if the Amazon guy shows up, you're going to hear him. So wanted to give you all a real quick overview of PetSmart Charities. So PetSmart is our corporate sponsor, and since the beginning of PetSmart in 1996, our founders of PetSmart have chosen never to sell dogs or cats in their pet stores. That was pretty unheard of at the time, but Jim and Janice Doherty recognized really early on the challenges with pet homelessness and overpopulation. So to address those challenges, they actually created a separate and independent 501c3, which is PetSmart Charities and PetSmart Charities of Canada. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary last year, and to date we've awarded over $400 million in grants. We've had a 4-star charity rating from Charity Navigator for the last 17 years, and we remain in the top 1% of all charities ranked on Charity Navigator. So if you are a donor to PetSmart Charities, you've probably made that contribution through the register at the PetSmart stores. And it's a great fundraising model. Every year, about 30 million people give $1.52 at that register, and that's what helps us create our program. So if you are a donor, thank you so much. We really, truly appreciate it. And those 25 years and $400 million granted, with partnerships of about 4,000 animal welfare organizations, have really allowed us to look at, the incredible impact we've made, and also look at our mission and make sure that we're adapting to the changing times. Pet overpopulation, especially for those of you who are in Connecticut, has shown in the last 10 years or so to being solved through consistent spay and neuter programs, and animal shelters are turning more into community resources rather than just what we used to know as the pound. They're really becoming great organizations. And so we at PetSmart Charities realized that we needed to look at pets as still part of vulnerable families, and also adapt as pets began moving from the backyard and into the bedroom. So we determined we needed to evolve and look at supporting the whole family, which humans are included in our definition of that whole family. So next slide. So that created this impetus of us creating our grant portfolio for preserving families. And it really began with us understanding this issue and helping those organizations that we work with understand how pets can not necessarily create barriers or impediments, but actually can be sometimes great resources to help humans get those services that they need. And one of the biggest challenges we have in this area is addressing the thought process that many often have, that people shouldn't have pets if they can't afford them, and that pets are luxury items. But we don't believe that pets should be seen as another challenge to a family budget, because having a pet isn't necessarily an affordability issue, but that's often where folks start at. So to give you a little context to this challenge, there are an estimated 29 million pets that live with families that are currently receiving SNAP benefits. This is information that is easily available from multiple sources to understand kind of how many pets might be living in challenging situations with families. But if you add to that the working poor, maybe an ALICE index program, to really understand, there's probably millions and more that are being affected. And especially if you look at the pandemic and what the pandemic has challenged, that is becoming even more profound as people are losing income or have less income because of the challenges we've had with the pandemic. And that it's just changed, and we all understand. So now we don't think anyone should argue that they can't have a pet if they can't afford it. But the truth of the matter is that circumstances change, like the pandemic. You may have had a pet before and circumstances changed, and now you're having challenges, making your rent or getting food for your family, but you still dearly love your pet. And we all also understand that poverty is cylindrical, so we can't ever make those broad sweeping generalizations about any type of pet family. And then time and time again, science has shown that pets provide much needed companionship and support. They can increase the health benefits to people, they build resiliency in families, and they can offer that unconditional love and support that so many people going through crisis situations need. So why would we ever deny a family that is going through challenging time the opportunity to maintain that human-animal bond and make measurable advantageous impact to both that person and the pet? And then finally, just looking at the finance side, if these pets aren't kept with their families, they're going to enter their own shelter system, and Theresa will talk about that soon. So collectively, we as taxpayers, we as members of the community, are going to be supporting these homeless pets anyway. And there's a larger cost associated with the cost of pet sheltering, just like there's a cost involved with human sheltering. So if you're looking at a $250 pet deposit and maybe $100 worth of shots, that solves the issue, and the kids in that family get to keep their 8-year-old, 90-pound mutt why wouldn't we want to support that? Why wouldn't we do that when the cost of sheltering that animal may be in excess of $1,000, and that's if you can find a home for that animal. So when we started this Preserving Families program, we realized we can't help pets of families in crisis without working with the human component of that crisis, because you all are the experts in that case management. Animal shelters have done what they call pet retention programs for about the last 8 to 10 years or so, but often those programs are only focused on what the pets needed without understanding what the humans needed as well. So that's where we expanded our focus of Preserving Families and discovered these major learnings, that we determined that family is defined as a minimum of one person and one pet, that it really is that familial unit of where you find your comfort, your impact, and your support. And that you've got to look at that this is a whole health, one health focus, that supporting the human while supporting the pets are critical from our point of view. And then the flip side, supporting those pets while supporting the humans are also critical, because that bond can actually help people move out of crisis and keep pets from going into crisis. And that cross collaboration is key, that the industries can't do this alone. The human welfare organizations are going to need the animal welfare organizations, and the animal welfare organizations are going to need to work with the human organizations to really truly understand what services the entire family needs to get them out of crisis. And that the success of this particular program is based on those human outcomes, because the animal can't be successful unless the human is successful. So we are really looking at how you can keep these families together and what we need to do to support the humans, keep their pets in order to help them. And that's why I'm here today. That's why we decided to do these programs with the two great organizations you're going to be hearing from today, and really, really excited to hear from all of you as we kick this off. So turning it over to you all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kelly. And we are, obviously incredibly appreciative here as an organization. And, a lot of our audience will be the people that'll be doing the case management that, can then help their clients with these funds. So, you're going to really see the direct impact from this. And with that, I want to turn it over to Garrett Parsons from the Interfaith Hospitality Network of Greater Cincinnati, a fellow Ohioan, who has a really wonderful program. Garrett is another recipient of the PetSmart Charities grant, or their organization. So has a really wonderful program, and may be really relevant to a lot of our audience out here. So with that, Garrett, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. And thank you to CCEH. We're really excited to be here. So my name is Garrett Parsons. I work here in Cincinnati at Interfaith Hospitality Network of Greater Cincinnati. I am our pet program coordinator. So I'll go into what our pet program does, but real quick, IHN, we are an emergency homeless shelter for families that are experiencing homelessness in the Greater Cincinnati area. We're one of the smaller shelters in the area, and we've been here since 1991. Our pet program is a really unique, exciting program. What we do is we work with pet owners that are without housing in Greater Cincinnati. So our program offers temporary shelter to families experiencing homelessness in Cincinnati. We hold on to these animals until they are able to get reunited with their owners once they secure pet-friendly permanent housing. The alternative to our program is what happens all over the country. Pet owners find themselves without housing. They don't have many options, and they have to surrender their pets that they may have had for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, you name it. They have to surrender their family members. So that's why our program exists. We're working at about preventing over 100 animals a year from entering animal shelters. We've recently expanded. I'll talk about that later. But I want to give everyone a little bit of a historically kind of what happened, because we didn't just go from being a family homeless shelter to being able to keep all of these animals on site to prevent owners from having to surrender them. So what we did, it happened really nicely over time, and it started informally. So we work with families without housing. We would have families enter our building that had cats, that had dogs, that didn't want to get rid of them, that would sometimes not enter a shelter because they have a pet. or might have to go through the traumatic loss of surrendering a pet in order to enter our shelter. We had families say, "Don't make me tell my child that we have to get rid of our dog." And these dogs or these cats could be like siblings to these children, and daughters and sons to these mothers and fathers. So it kind of came really naturally that we wanted to be able to prevent these families from getting rid of their pet. So it was very informal at first. We would keep dogs and cats in our offices, and I wasn't here at the time, so I can only imagine what that was like, but we would keep these animals with us on site. The families would care for them to the best of their abilities, and once they found housing, they'd get their animal back, or they'd go into housing with their animal, I should say. There was a PetSmart Grant that we learned about that what it would do was install kennels in our basement area, in our storage area. So we jumped at that. Our executive director, Stacy Burge, jumped at this grant. We got it. We installed 4 dog kennels and 4 cat kennels downstairs so that families coming into our building excuse me, could keep their dog or their cat safely on site, not just in an office, but in a kennel where the family could go downstairs, care for that animal, and then go into housing with their pet once they secured that. Once we got these kennels, calls just started coming in from all of the other homeless shelters and social service agencies in the area, and even some animal welfare organizations. So we saw how much of a need there was to offer this service and expand what we were doing to offer it to more people in Cincinnati. So Stacy Burge, our executive director, looked into grant funding to hire someone to run this program. So that's when I got on board. I had just graduated from University of Cincinnati with my bachelor's of social work. I became a licensed social worker shortly after, and I actually had my internship here my senior year. So I knew about this pet program, was super excited that they were going to hire someone to run the program. Started out being part-time. So I jumped at that. I got hired, and the purpose was to expand the program. So once I started, we established a volunteer base to be able to care for these animals. So we didn't have volunteers beforehand, and we made our program available to all of the homeless shelters in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, even outside of our county here in Hamilton County. So we started to quickly fill up. And we maintained that for, we've been running for I've been here for 4 years now. I just had my 4-year work anniversary. So we have been able to help hundreds of animals every year, cats and dogs. We've had bearded dragons, we've had turtles, we've had rabbits, we've had, we worked with ferrets. So really more than just dogs and cats, but any pet. We kind of consider family. So we've been doing that for 4 years. We have a really solid volunteer base. And the reason we're doing all of this is because our families were coming to us and saying, these are our family members. So as good social workers, we know that our families, they have a right to define their own definition of what their family is. And they also have a right to self-determination. So we have been respecting that, and we're going to continue to do so. We actually, thanks to PetSmart Charities, have been able to renovate our facilities to double our capacity. So instead of being able to have 20 animals on site for 20 pet owners that are in the community, we'll be able to have close to 50 on site, and hopefully keep 300 pets with their owners and out of animal shelters per year. We also have an amazing foster program, and these are fosters that take animals into their own homes and care for them until their pet owners secure pet-friendly housing. So we, in addition to running the small animal shelter, as a social worker, it really helps to work with our families, help make referrals if they're not established, if they don't have some sort of relationship with the social service agency, help them navigate housing, help them navigate pet-friendly housing, since that's even harder to come by, because affordable housing is already hard to come by. In addition to all of these facilities that we have in the foster program and being able to keep pets on site, we have been expanding constantly. So in addition to working with pets whose owners are homeless, we've been able to work with pets whose owners are in crisis in general. We saw that there was a need to house pets whose owners might be going into the hospital and had a small support system. They had nowhere for their pet to go, or pet owners that had to go into a rehabilitation program. We've even started the conversation of working with pets whose owners are incarcerated. We actually just got a call yesterday about that. So we've really been trying to do everything that we can to keep pets with their people, to keep families together, and to help pet owners that are in crisis. So our main goal is to prevent trauma that these families would have to go through by surrendering their pets and keep pets out of animal shelters. So we kind of have two goals here. And then I'll kind of finish by we've started to expand a bit more. We're on a coalition called SAFE. So that stands for Saving Animals from Eviction. We're on the coalition with our county animal shelter, Cincinnati Care, which is just 2 months old. We had a change of hands in the county animal shelter. And then 2 city spay-neuter clinics for cats and for dogs and cats. So our coalition, Saving Animals from Eviction, is to work with pet owners before they're in crisis. Maybe they're on the verge of crisis. Maybe they would end up having to surrender their pet one day, but it's really just pet owners in need. So we help with pet deposits. We help with behavior modifications, supplies, pet food. We are actually, just like Connecticut is, a second recipient of this emergency grant due to the economic impact of COVID to work with pet owners that are in need of our assistance. So we've been able to have a referral system set up with our social service agencies and our animal welfare organizations to kind of come together and work with pet owners who might be in need of our funds. We've already had referrals come in from our food banks and then from other social service agencies and our spay-neuter clinics and our county animal shelter. So we've started to really help pet owners who are in crisis, who need our help, who need this kind of emergency assistance because they're pet owners. There's a lot that we want to do here in Cincinnati, and I really hope that Connecticut kind of gets to do some similar work at some point. And this workshop is a really awesome opportunity and start that conversation. I think to end, I'll touch again on why we're doing it and why it's important for kind of the everyday social worker. So I know that's a lot of the audience here in this workshop is we respect our families, their right to self-determination, like I've said before, and their right to define themselves. So if we are working with families that have these dogs, have these cats, these bearded dragons or rabbits or whatever it may be, if they say that these pets are family members, then it's our responsibility, I mean, per our code of ethics, to respect that and see what we can do to preserve that bond and keep that family together. So what we've done here in Cincinnati is pretty unique. And I think there's a lot of different ways our communities all over the country can work on this and preserve this bond. We're really excited to do it, and we're excited to be here. So thanks so much.
Wonderful, Garrett. Thank you so much. Yes, Garrett and I spoke on the phone a couple of times. Kelly connected us, and it's been really fascinating to learn about their program. And I know we have a few programs here in Connecticut that have similar, not quite nearly to the level. And I'm hoping that we actually might have some of those folks in the audience who can speak to that a little bit, or can ask some sort of specific questions, because there is it's a relatively new idea, is my understanding. So, I think that we will see that across the board. And speaking of our partners here in Connecticut, I want to turn it over to Theresa Geary of the Connecticut Humane Society. Theresa and the Humane Society is going to be working very closely with us on some of the specifics of this program as people have needs for their pets. We really want to work closely with the Humane Society to offer some of those needs. So Theresa, with that, I will turn it over to you, and I have your slides as well.
Thank you, Brian. So we are also very excited to be working with CCEH in this program. You can switch slides, please. So a little bit about Connecticut Humane Society. We have 3 locations across the state of Connecticut. We offer pet surrender services, surrender prevention, pet adoption services, euthanasia services, and a very good sized pet food pantry, and offer community pet wellness clinics all over the state. Certainly, we have full service animal shelters. We're here to support our community, whether we are adding a family member to them or they need to separate one. And we also, the wellness clinics are invaluable to folks who don't have access to veterinary care. Next slide, please. Along with our 3 shelters, we also have a low-fee veterinary clinic, our Fox Memorial Clinic, which is located in Newington. And the Fox, oftentimes the clinic these are the last stop for folks. They don't have anywhere else to go. They don't have a lot of financial resources, and they don't want to separate from their pet. And so it is our job to work with them to figure out what finances they do have access to and what that pet needs to be able to keep it in that home. We see a little bit more than 5,000 clients each year with more than one pet in each of their families, and it is meaningful to them to not have to separate or make that really difficult decision. We've heard it all from Kelly and from Garrett that this is really about keeping pets and families together and not judging what resources they do or don't have, removing all of our own personal judgment and just saying, we're going to keep this family and this pet together and help them, which is how when we started talking about this partnership with CCEH, next slide, please, is really the whole goal here is working together to help pets and families stay together. Connecticut Humane Society is set up to do that. We do that already. However, we can reach far more people in our communities with the partnership with CCEH and keep those folks and those families, as Kelly said, one pet, one person, doesn't matter the number, keep it intact. They don't need to come into a sheltering system. As Kelly said, here at Connecticut Humane, it can cost us upwards of $900 to rehome an animal from start to finish, and that money is better spent keeping that family and that pet together. And it's stressful and hurtful to all of the people involved when they are separated. Our goal here in this new partnership, thanks to PetSmart Charities, is providing medical care to pet owners in need, providing guidance to CCEH and their network to ensure that those families get the care and services that they need, that they don't even know exists, and referring clients to CCEH when our first point of contact is the Connecticut Humane Society. It is not uncommon for people to drive up to well, now call because of COVID, but certainly drive up and say, I'm living in my car with my cats, I'm about to be homeless, and I need to surrender them, and now we have a resource to direct them to. So we can hit this problem from a couple of different angles, and it is an amazing opportunity in the state of Connecticut. We look forward to modeling Cincinnati in a lot of ways, and look forward to learning from them, and we won't have to stumble our way through it because we have a partner. So again, this is such an important issue in our state. It's an important issue in our country, but here we're going to be able to tackle it head on, and we'll absolutely have great success. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to work with these families.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Theresa. And yes, I completely echo those sentiments. There is, as we sort of put together this project, there was a lot of fact finding too, and sort of reaching out to a lot of these new partners and learning, what was going on. And, one of the coolest things was sort of this idea of Humane Society is looking to do more, human service work, and we're looking to do more pet service work. So you couldn't find a better partnership. And so with that, I also want to invite up and everyone on the panel, if you'd like to turn cameras and cameras back on, we'll keep our mute etiquette on. But I also want to just announce that from CCH here, we have Amber Freeman, as well as David Gonzalez-Rice, 2 members of our PETS task force, who have been instrumental as we, really craft this program going forward. So I think with that, we really like to open up to the audience. We've got a couple of questions coming in. So please use that Q&A function. We are really viewing today as the sort of official launch of this program. This will be a flexible emergency assistance program like some other programs CCH has. So, we encourage you to ask kind of specific questions about that, as well as, please to ask to our partners here, sort of the work they do, and how there's other potential partnerships that could come out of this, which I think, as we all know, as a coalition, partnerships make the work we do very possible. So with that, let's see, we have here, this is actually a great question, our very first question. So this is to Garrett. Who handles your veterinary care? Since you have the shelter in-house, who handles your veterinary care?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have really good partnerships with our spay-neuter clinics, who also do wellness. They can handle vaccinations. We have a relationship with a local veterinarian who offers discounts to us. So really what we do is I handle transportation. We have plenty of grant funding to help pay for these vaccinations, help pay for the spay-neuter surgeries, any additional medical needs, which of course they arise all the time, whether something happens on site or some sort of pre-existing condition. We didn't start out with that grant funding. Our partners, the spay-neuter clinics, they had grant funding to help us out. So for the first year or two, and some still are helping us at no cost to us. And then we've started to slowly be able to pay for it on our own. We don't ask the pet owners to pay for it, even though they try and offer.
Ryan, can I add something to that just real quick?
Please.
So oftentimes folks will not understand. They'll say, well, it's just a spay and neuter clinic. This dog maybe needs his ear infection fixed. I would still reach out to those clinics because those are still, veterinarians that have that capacity to do. And while they may not offer all the services to their public customers, they may be willing to take on your clients as a separate section, because those veterinarians often have to keep up those skills rather than just doing just wellness and spay and neuter. So it's always good to have those conversations, not only with spay and neuter clinics, but your local, maybe Humane Society or SPCAs, to see if there might be a possibility that they might want to work with your very specific population on things.
And to speak a little bit about how that will function here, I mean, this is a truly flexible assistance fund. So, when those veterinary costs are what we look at as a barrier to housing, especially when it, is a diversion or a rapid exit, that's exactly what we're establishing this fund to do. So when those minor costs, especially if you've got someone saying, I won't take a pet that's not spayed or neutered, we'll be able to assist with that, thanks to this. So, perfect. Back to, this is a good question. Someone asked, does this exist in Connecticut? And, this is exactly what we're implementing here. But to build off of that, I think that another piece of this that we didn't really touch on here is talking about people with pets who are unsheltered, and especially when pets actually not only serve as a barrier to housing, but sometimes serve as a barrier to coming into the system at all. And David, I'd like to just kind of hear you touch on that a little bit, and Theresa, maybe offer some of your expertise. I know that that's something we discussed a lot, was having those folks who you're maybe their first point of contact because they're worried about their pet, or they won't come into our service system because they don't want to be separated, and how we could possibly see this program really resolving those issues.
Thanks, Ryan. So to Elise's question, the intention is for this project to go statewide. We've been in touch with your CAN coordinator already about what that referral process will look like. So watch for nitty-gritty details very soon. I work out in that part of Connecticut and live out that way. And so had in mind this scenario that I encountered when I was coordinating the Eastern CAN, when Ryan and I and others on the team at CCEH were talking about program design. So thankfully, in the way that this grant is structured, we have the freedom to offer a number of different kinds of allowable costs, which could include anything from a pet deposit related to moving into a unit, to kenneling and boarding fees, if that's a real necessity to be able to bring somebody into shelter for an animal that's a pet and is not a service or emotional support animal, with those kinds of reasonable accommodations at issue. So veterinary costs as well. So I think you'll find when we get the literature out to describe the program, We're really encouraging you all to think creatively, help us kind of build the model and the case for this kind of service, look forward to hearing from the CANs. We expect you'll find a lot of these households in need of this service at the front door between 2-on-1 and the CAN appointment, or rather, from a 2-on-1 referral to the CAN appointment. But we also know that the housing solutions meetings, or in some CANs, there's a homeless outreach team meeting, case conference these kinds of scenarios, where there's a person living with an animal in a vehicle, and it has to date been, especially difficult to resolve. So hope that this is really helpful for exactly that kind of scenario as well.
Perfect. Thank you, David. That's great. And then, yeah, Theresa, I know we had talked about this a little bit. Are you able to maybe share an experience or two of where you've had, this is something that came up in our conversations, where you've had people who are, possibly, what we would probably define as chronically homeless, who are really coming to you first, and as a point of contact into the system because they're so concerned about their pets. I mean, that's something that you've experienced.
Yeah, Ryan, right now I think we've seen it on the shelter side, the surrender side, right? Where people are coming because they don't know what else to do with the pet, because they don't have any place to live and they don't want the pet to be subjected to living in a car or on the streets. And I think what's fascinating about what we're learning through this process is we don't ask enough questions about people. We ask a lot of questions about pets. Right. And so we get to know Fluffy and Fluffy's needs and what Fluffy likes to eat and how Fluffy plays, but we don't ask about their family dynamic in a way that talks about how the pet is fitting into that and how that's working for them. And so I foresee, both on the veterinary clinic side, the Fox Memorial Clinic side, and our shelter side, our staff are going to be learning from your team about how to ask the people questions, so that we can figure out who these folks are, where they are in our community, and get them the services that they need to keep that pet with them and get them off the streets, if in fact that's how that is going to work for them, and they are actively wanting to pursue that. So I think this goes far beyond a little bit of veterinary care and keeping a pet with a family. It's looking to find who these folks are, where they are, and getting them all of the services they need, and not just the pet side or the people side. But we're so excited about closing this loop, right? Closing the loop of the whole family and not leaving a part of it left on the table, and them not getting all the services for everybody in the family. So it is an eye-opening experience for Connecticut Humane Society, and we are ready to dig in.
Excellent. This is interesting. And Kelly, I'm hoping you can maybe speak to this on a national level, and maybe my panelists here have some more expertise than I do. This is someone who's located at a transitional home for veterans struggling with homelessness, and they're asking what they can do to advocate for the residents that have pets in an effective way. So, I know transitional housing is a little bit different, a little bit outside of our shelter, but in that case, what can people who are in any type of homelessness assistance program, what can they be doing to really sort of, make sure at kind of a bigger level that these kind of protections are in place? And Kelly, I think, again, you may be able to speak to this in some of the other grantee programs that are out there that are maybe addressing things from this way.
Sure. I guess I would ask, who are you trying to advocate to? Because what are you trying to receive for these families? So are you trying to make sure that when they move into transitional housing, that the transitional housing has pet-friendly facilities? And then certainly you can look at the emotional support animal designation for those pets. And then also it's a little bit about working with those housing authorities to show how pets actually increase the ability for people to move through the system, and that those studies are now being done so that there is the ability and kind of the carrot opportunity to, you can keep your pet, you can keep them here, we're going to keep you supported, that they are then able to receive the services that they need within a transitional housing facility to then move into permanent housing afterwards. So One of it is really making sure you're understanding the information that's out there about the human animal bond. And there is a great resource for that called HABRI, and it's called the Human Animal Bond Institute, HABRI. And they have some great research on HABRI about pet-friendly housing, about human animal bond science. So you can utilize all of those opportunities to create your elevator speech as you're talking to those people you have to advocate for on behalf of your clients to either change policies or systems. Thank
Excellent.
you, Ryan. Good job.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop that in the chat as well. I'm also gonna follow up something that we have looked at that I know that many people on this panel have been involved in is the guidance from the National Alliance to End Homelessness, which has also put together a really wonderful kind of case study about this kind of thing, which has based a lot of our work. So I'm dropping both of those in the chat. That's wonderful and very helpful. This is bound to come up. With COVID, we have seen a major uptick in pet adoptions, which I think we all know, which is great news. But I suppose the concerning side of that is that what we know is possibly looming around the corner, and something we've talked about a lot here at this conference, and we'll continue to talk about is with eviction moratoria ending and the potential economic fallout of COVID. That obviously could lead to also a greater risk of animal surrender and evictions, job loss, etc. Now, Theresa, this is maybe to you and probably Garrett. Are you starting to see that, or are we still kind of not quite there yet, or do you feel that uptick coming around the corner here?
We have not seen an uptick in surrenders related, especially not adoptions, the ones we've done, and we did a fair number as well as everybody else did around the country, but I suspect, and this is anecdotal, but I suspect we're seeing a relationship with a pet differently since COVID. I think COVID has changed a lot of people's perspectives and about those relationships and how important they really are, because I think pets kept and are continuing to keep people in a good mental space while they're at home and isolated. So I think the relationships are going to look a little different. We will certainly keep an eye on that because there's always a concern of surrender, but that's also where we put the surrender prevention things into place. So if it is pet food that you need, you can be on our pet food pantry service for up to 2 years if that's what it takes to get you back and stable, so that that money can go to other things that you need. So those are the programs we will continue to move through. Again, our Fox Memorial Clinic, if the animal has a medical condition, we will try and work with those folks to achieve the outcome of a positive, resolution of that medical problem without costing them money. We have very generous donors to the Connecticut Humane Society who help us operate, and that is how we work with the folks that come to us in greatest need. So an eye on it, but it's not been happening yet.
That's encouraging. Garrett, from the Midwest?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll add on. So I second to what Theresa was saying about that relationship and how that's probably changed a lot in a lot of communities. I'll start by, it was super interesting to notice that as soon as the pandemic started, things were shutting down. We had no calls. People were not asking for our services, which told me people were probably not getting evicted nearly as much. That helped us out a lot because that's when we decided to do our renovations, thanks to our grant funding. So there was a quiet period. It was loud downstairs when they were doing construction, but our phones were silent. But it has been picking back up. The past month or so, we have been getting more calls. I can't speak to our county's surrender rates or reasons for surrender because I don't have that information right yet. But we have been getting more calls, probably the same as we were getting before the pandemic. So I wouldn't say we're having more of a need due to COVID. But then again, we've also had a lot of pet owners call needing assistance, why we have this PetSmart Charities grant for the emergency assistance in the first place. So it seems to be changing a little bit. And that's just the people that know about our program. So we're still getting the word out. We've been here 5 years. We're still getting the word out. So hopefully that answered the question.
And I would say nationally, we're not seeing it from any of our partners yet. There's kind of a scared expectation we might in the future. I think the bigger challenge right now is the fact that a lot of veterinary clinics were shut down because of COVID, so there's backlog to a lot of things, and whether it's spay and neuter or just even plain old medical. And so some animals who may have had conditions that could have been helped earlier are now getting helped later, and they may be more expensive at this point, which may put a further burden on those that are economically challenged. But what we have seen is that, just like Connecticut Humane, a lot of these shelters are moving into what they call the HOS model, which is the Human Animal Supportive Services model, where they are really trying to look at that whole issue and not just the pet, as Theresa was saying. And there's a couple other questions about this. Is, have you seen people, how many people don't reclaim their pets when they go into these types of programs? And it really, for the most part, from what I've seen, and Garrett can talk about it, it's really rare in good programs. And the good programs is making sure that the human organization is talking to the animal organization, because the crisis of the human has to be resolved in order for that family to come together. So if you are only, as a municipal shelter, working with that animal, you are only holding on to the animal. You're not helping resolve the human's crisis, and the human is what has to bring the family together. So Garrett, I would say less than 10% don't reclaim animals, and that's sort of nationally what I'm hearing from everybody.
It's around there, and of course every year is different and we'll have a slightly different statistic, but the thing is, what we've also been tracking is, why are these animals not being returned to their owner? And very rarely do owners just not come back. It happens, unfortunately, but it's very rare. Really, the main reason if they don't get to go back to their owner is because the owner either found out that they got into housing that did not allow pets, and there's no way around that. These are families that might have children, and they have to decide, do I stay homeless longer to find a place for the whole family, or do I get into housing? So that's a terrible trauma that these families have to go through. And then sometimes these families, they have so much going on. They've endured so much trauma. They know that if they're not able to reclaim their pet, we can find a home for them. They kind of know that right off the bat, just in case. So they utilize that. But yeah, like Kelly said, it is rare, fortunately.
Yeah, that was my next question. Good. Kelly's taking over my job as excellent. That's yeah, we've had a couple of questions about that, because I do think that that's obviously a big concern. Now, to sort of speak further, I mean, it is rare, but what are your procedures? And then I can actually maybe even answer a little bit about, we maybe have some plans for some of that here. And obviously the Humane Society would be our partner in that, if that were to occur, that, you know, that you have some more potentially permanent facilities for true surrender of animals. But yeah, what do you do when that happens?
So it's different case by case. I have had plenty of volunteers and coworkers adopt our animals that needed homes, and they're still with them, great homes. But we also have a partnership with different rescues in the community. Fortunately, we've never had to move an animal into our county shelter. They're already overburdened as it is with animals. So we utilize our smaller rescues to find homes for the animals. So I can say confidently that 100% of our animals have either ended up with their owner or adopted after a short stint with a rescue, or in kind of a weird period of time, middle ground.
Ryan, I'll add to that. I also think it's important not to just assume surrender isn't going to happen, because I think in some cases, part of the questions the caseworkers are going to be asking is the pet safe in the home? Are the people safe with that pet, right? Is that relationship healthy for all of them? And I think we are going to see some that relationship is not healthy anymore for one reason or another, and that animal needs to be rehomed. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's why the surrender service exists. Where we can keep a healthy relationship together, that's the other side of it. And they're both important, because an unhealthy relationship in a family, whether with your pet or your family member, can be very stressful and devastating. And that doesn't exclude a relationship with a pet.
Excellent. I can also speak a little bit to sort of on that line, as well as this kind of ties in with, I guess this is actually a little bit the other side. That I know there was a question earlier about if someone needed a temporary kennel stay or a temporary stay, which is, Garrett, very similar to sort of your program. We don't have a lot of programs like that here. And I can speak to the program that we're establishing would actually allow for that as long as it's part of a comprehensive housing plan. So as long as that really includes, you know, an exit strategy, you know, we don't want to sort of open up a long-term stay. You know, we want to make sure that that's a true, removing a barrier to housing, not just, you know, sort of extending a stay of homelessness. But that is something that we've really talked about here, and we're working out some of the specifics. And actually, before the session ends, I definitely will have Amber discuss a little bit about some more of these specifics and the actual training for this for people in the room who might be interested in that. But would you have a couple more questions? This one in particular, I think, is really fascinating. Are you seeing more and more landlords not allowing pets, or specifically not allowing pets of a certain type? I mean, I think we all, you know, think of the potential breeds that some people see as problematic. Or, you know, maybe good news, are we seeing more, you know, openness to animals? And, you know, the question asker, Garrett, is specifically asking about Cincinnati, but, you know, across the board, you know, Theresa and Kelly, from the national perspective, I'd love to see, where do you think that's trending? Are people getting better or worse when we're talking about rental and pets?
I'll go quickly first. So I'm sure Kelly will speak to nationally what it looks like, because I know there are more pet-friendly cities than Cincinnati when it comes to housing. But we have had a really hard time with pet-friendly landlords. We, you know, I don't have the data to prove it, but I'm sure that pet-friendly housing is you're more likely to find pet-friendly housing in more affluent housing. Housing that is not as affordable. With affordable housing comes less pet friendliness, I would assume. We have worked on some big scale projects about incentivizing landlords to become pet friendly. We're trying to target landlords that are already semi-pet friendly. Maybe they allow cats and small dogs. We want them to allow all pets. We kind of started using what the Humane Society talks about as pets are welcome, becoming a PAW, P-A-W property. So we wanted to incentivize landlords to do this, talking about how pet owners that are in housing are more likely to stay in housing than non-pet owners. And if you become a PAW property, you know, we will help your tenants with access to vaccines, behavior modification. We'll even offer TNR to your condos, or to your apartment complexes. If you have a community cat problem at your apartment complexes, we'll go in and help with that population. So we haven't had a whole lot of success because it is, I think, a long-term effort that we're working on. What we can do is start that conversation. I think putting more pressure on landlords is what we've been trying to do. The more our community talks about the importance of pet-friendly housing, that shift is going to naturally happen. And we'll probably have more initiatives and do more work in the future. Right now, we're kind of just trying to do what our program is, but it's absolutely on our radar, because that's gonna make our jobs a lot easier. It's going to make our families' lives a lot easier.
And I'd say Ryan's correct. I think it's a cultural shift. It's kind of it's actually breaking down false narratives, but we had to do the research to determine this was a false narrative. So HABRI has that information for you, that actually pet-friendly housing, their renters stay in that housing longer than the average renter, and destruction done by pets is less costly than destruction done by children. No offense to children, but they've done that research, so you can bring that up. But it's really changing kind of the thoughts and ideas of what people have about pets, and specifically about large breed pets or certain breeds. I mean, then you're working with kind of counties that may have breed restrictions as well, but it's going to be a longer haul. What I think is positive, and Ryan's done this a little bit too, is when the insurance companies are getting behind this now. So both Allstate as well as State Farm have done a lot of pet-friendly housing insurance policies, both for large-scale landlord groups, but also individuals. So that might be something that's helpful and could potentially be looked at. Can I pay the premium of your insurance for your pet? Because they're usually pretty reasonable, $20 a month, if that's what takes you to get into housing. put it in the grant. You know, those are the things that we're looking at too. So don't try to reinvent the wheel, get that stuff, because with landlords, you're going to have to come at it from a dollar point of view. This will make you money. This will save you money.
That's great. That's exactly right. I think that's exactly the way we thought about this whole program is right. That will make you money, it will save you money. And obviously our audience, I'm sure, is aware of the difficulty of landlord education in many cases. And this is probably, you know, another one because it's maybe feels easier to say no, but also, you know, this is great to see this. We'll definitely distribute this information around afterwards. This sort of backed up by scientific data, and we're hoping that this program here has that case study element to it. In fact, that's sort of built in to this program. Is not only do we see this as an opportunity to, you know, have emergency assistance funds available, but we really want to view this as an opportunity to show how much positive impact a pet-specific emergency assistance fund can have. You know, it'll function a lot like the structures of our existing Be Homeful funds or anything we've sort of we've done around COVID with those kind of one-time emergency assistance you know, costs for families that are right at the front door of their shelter or for rapid exits. And actually, you know, as we kind of approach our last couple of minutes here, I don't want to lose this opportunity. So Amber, I'd love to, if you don't mind, we actually have a training set for the first round of this as we get everyone trained and actually start getting these funds out the door. So Amber, if possible, if you'd like to talk for just a few minutes about just kind of what that training looks like and what our plans are.
Sure. So we want to continue this conversation now that we put it out there, what the program's about. We want to continue it and give more information about the ins and outs of the program. So there will be a training on October 13th at 12 o'clock. That information has gone out in our CCEH training newsletters that's sent out, but if you have not received it and you're interested in being a part of it, you can feel free to email me at training@cceh.org and I'll get it set up for you so you can attend. But the training, we're going to go over in more detail, you know, about the program, how to access the funds, as well as what will qualify for an appropriate fund, a form of assistance. As we've already talked about, you know, the goal is to house someone without their pet being a barrier. So if it takes putting an animal in boarding or assisting with veterinary services or getting insurance, because that's what the landlord is requiring, we can assist with doing that. We also want to make sure that once someone's house, you know, the pet is set up, they have the necessary, the crate, the food, the leash that's required, anything to house someone and just keep them housed. But eventually, you know, we'd like to go a little step further and see how we can keep the animal housed, how we can keep the individual housed. So often someone has to decide and choose, you know, are they going to pay their rent or is their animal going to eat? So we also want to link individuals to different services and resources in the community to show what's out there. So a part of this training, Theresa and her team at the Connecticut Humane Society will be joining me to speak about all of the resources that's available, how to access them, but also we want to change the narrative. You know, we want to work with case managers and say how to have different conversations instead of just simply saying, you can give up your animal. No, instead we want to show them how to have these conversations where we want to keep the individual housed and their pet. So in the future, you will be seeing more trainings where we're incorporating a pet component to shelter diversion, because we don't just want to divert individuals from the shelter, but we also want to take in consideration that they have a pet and make sure that they're safe as well and they have a home. And the option is not just simply get rid of your pet. So more to come with all of that, but please join us for the training. And as I said, if you don't have the information and you would like to join, I can get the information to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amber. And yes, yeah, you can either email us at info@cceh.org. You can check out the website, cceh.org. We've got all of the trainings listed up there. My contact information is rbeach, that's RBEACH at cceh.org. If you have any other specific questions, I can sort of guide them. I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists here today. You were all fantastic. Really excited to have worked with you and be working with you on this project going forward. I don't see this as being an ending relationship anytime soon. Go ahead and move on. So thank you all so much for everyone that has participated in the conference thus far. Again, three days left. We've been a little bit ambitious, but it's going great so far. And up next, we have a happy hour, BYO whatever. We have a little bit of a surprise, I believe. CCH CEO Richard Cho, I believe, is doing some trivia tonight. And, also feel free to bring your pets, bring your animals. But thank you all so much for attending the session. As Amber said, more to come, and really excited to get this money out in the field and really start making an impact on those households. So with that, again, huge thank you to my panelists. Thank you all so very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.